Hello and welcome to the Hard Card Podcast, recorded and filmed at Authentic Collectables HQ in Perth, Western Australia. Today we're joined by a true legend of modern motor racing, both in Australia and New Zealand. He's one of the most popular drivers of his generation and a person that has served as an inspiration for so many of the New Zealand drivers competing on the world stage today. Of course, I'm talking about the one and only Greg Murphy. Murph, thanks for joining us. How are you going?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Glad to be able to find the time, mate, to come and have a chat.
I know it is hard to find the time for yourself sometimes. How does life look for Greg Murphy these days? What's your day-to-day look like?
Oh, I don't think your listeners really want to go into too much depth or detail on what that looks like. I don't think it's that exciting or interesting. Effectively, I suppose a lot of what I do these days is really similar to probably a fair bit of what a current supercar driver does outside of the race car, servicing requirements around, relationships with sponsors and ambassador roles and all sorts of things like that. So I do a lot of that kind of thing, just without the actual racing side. So I've been pretty lucky when I moved back to New Zealand, to also get on board with supercars doing the TV, but also maintain a whole lot of relationships that I had over here while I was full-time racing. And a lot of that's continued, but I've also branched into a fair bit of stuff around road safety, have a big involvement with sort of advocating for change here in New Zealand and annoying as many, bureaucrats and politicians as I can. And so we've got a Street Smart, which is a driver training program as well that we've actually just kicked off again with thanks to Tony Quinn with a whole lot of money that he's kicked into it to get our program up and operational once again, which is awesome. And do a lot of work with Josie Spillane from the Quinn group of circuits here in New Zealand as well. We do a lot of stuff with that, and that's come about in the last couple of years as well. So it's a whole lot of bits and pieces that I somehow managed to make work and fit enough time and to give justice to all those relationships that I've got.
The whole road safety thing, I mean, when you've had a career like yours, you've been able to enjoy so much success from driving cars fast, I guess it's kind of a nice tie-in to give back a little bit by spreading the message that, there's racetracks and there's roads and they're completely different things. Yeah,
and that, I think, when I first kicked off, which is now a long time ago, really pushing hard, and it sort of kicked off just before I moved back to New Zealand. I've been back here now over 10 years, so which is hard to fathom. But initially, I think people were like, oh, well, all you've done is drive fast. What the hell would you know? Well, you know a lot about managing a vehicle and knowing what needs to be done to keep a vehicle on the road at all sorts of speeds. You understand different conditions. You understand the physics behind, what a car is all about and what it has to do to stop, corner, change direction, all this kind of stuff. And so when you start explaining that, it sort of starts to make sense to more people. But we also see the risks, right? Because we've dealt with risk all our careers, and we've been involved in crashes and things and decisions and the likes that are good, bad, or not. And that's all relevant to driving on the road. So I think it's accepted now, very much accepted by certainly the media on giving opinion around road safety and what's wrong in our country, and probably pretty much the same things wrong in Australia as well, and what needs to be done. Getting things changed is very much the hard part, because politicians and bureaucrats, they're not there for the greater good of the population. They're there pretty much most of the time to look after themselves, it seems, by some of the decisions they make. So it's a really important thing. And also, I rode a car off when I was 18 years old, and because I thought I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof, as we all do, and made a couple of bad decisions, and the outcome was a fortunate one. Didn't kill anybody and didn't hurt anyone too bad. And from that moment on, I realised, I needed to change the way I went about stuff, and I've used that as an example of, talking to youth and talking to a lot of people. Is that I made that mistake, and I ended up being a race car driver and having a second chance, right? Whereas a lot of people don't get second chances. It finishes with one bad decision.
That's very true. Now, sort of speaking about your role, as an influential person, we've had three young Kiwi drivers on this show so far. We had Scotty Mack, we had Ryan Wood, we had Andre Heimgartner. Every single one of them said that you were their childhood hero. How does that kind of sit with you? As I said at the top of the show, like, you are actually an inspiration for so many drivers doing amazing things all over the world. How do you feel about that?
I think that's pretty strong. Listen, it's very humbling, and I'm glad that there was, that I've played a part in the lives and the careers and the creation of, those stars that they have become in the sport. It's awesome, and giving back's really important. Not that I gave a lot. They just, they obviously watched me doing my stuff, and then have gone on to prove their justification in the sport, and setting their own careers, and I'm sure now influencing so many other kids, which is just awesome, right? That's what it's all about. So when you're doing those things, when you're racing and you're tearing around Pukekohe, and some of these guys are sitting there watching. Your intent at that point has got nothing to do with inspiring others. It's about, winning and all your selfish reasons. So, but to have a flow on and have a connection with young talent coming out of New Zealand now, it's incredibly rewarding, and I just love it. I love supporting, helping in whatever way I can to keep that flow going. I love seeing people achieve great things in our sport, and watching Scotty do what he did, be on pole position for the Indy 500 last weekend, far out. Who didn't have shivers down their spine watching qualifying and see him do that? Just makes a lot of us very, very proud. Obviously, it was just a special thing to see, and likewise all the other things that the young Kiwi drivers are doing around the world, and obviously in Australia with the likes of Ryan and Matt Payne and Richie Stanaway, and also Andre. It's awesome to see, and it makes you really proud.
It comes up a bit, but what is it in the water over in New Zealand? For as long as there's been professional motorsport, there's been Kiwis outperforming the size of the population, the remoteness of the country in general on the world stage. Like, is it the gravel roads? Is it the support of, some patrons like the Gill Traps that have done amazing work in terms of getting drivers to places? Is it an ingrained culture of just loving motorsport and cars from having grown up there and obviously been influenced by whatever it is? Where does this come from?
No one's been able to put their finger on it, right? There's a lot of support that once people start to showcase their skills is on offer. You mentioned the Gill Trap Group, which have supported so many drivers through offshore and into superstardom, and the one that probably is at the top of the list there is Scott Dixon, right? So huge support there from them, and also other people to get him established overseas. But you mentioned the word water before. What's in the water? Funnily enough, I had a conversation with Chris Vanderdrift last weekend at the Hamilton kart track. We were there and doing a little story for Sky Speed, which is a TV show here in New Zealand, a weekly show on motorsport and cars and stuff. And I was doing an interview with him about a young karting star that's impressing overseas at the moment, Jay Irwin, who's doing amazing things in the US in the Pro Kart Stars Tour, I think it is, in KZ2. And we were talking about that, and one of the things that maybe is something that can be referenced, and Chris sort of agreed, is, and I remember doing it when I was, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years of age in my karting career. We used to turn up at the kart track, all the way through winter, and probably 80% of the time that we were at the kart track during months of going kart racing, it was wet, right?
Yeah.
And so we used to race in the wet all the time, and often, certainly in the early phases, and we're talking, the beginning of the karting, and there has been times in later years that you're racing on slicks in the wet, right? There's no wet tires. You didn't have wet tires, and also you're out on the track on slicks in a race, and it rains, and you've got to deal with it. And I don't know if it is something or not, but we tended, and Chris agreed, the amount of racing that you did in karting on slick tyres on wet tracks. And it happened on the weekend at Hamilton. We're standing there and it's rain during a race, and all these kids are out there having to deal with a wet track. Now, I'm sure that it also is can be said to be the same thing in Australia and other parts of the world, but maybe the propensity for it to be like that in New Zealand is more common potentially. So that might be a reason, but other than that, mate, I can't answer it.
You still do a bit of driving yourself these days. You show up in the odd TV piece driving a supercar. If there was the wild card with Richie a couple of years ago, I think you raced, that was the last book of Koa. You're in the Sierra. Do you still jump in a car and sort of feel like you can give it a pretty good shake?
Yeah, absolutely. You can give it a pretty good shake. I mean, I was terrified at the wild card, in 2022. I really just was against wanting to do that from the beginning. And then when it actually happened and we got there, I was sort of pleasantly surprised and reasonably happy with sort of the performance. But it's when you're not driving something all the time and thinking about driving all the time, these things that are harder to actually bring back in to your repertoire and harder to actually bring yourself to do. The idea of ballsing something up and making a mess of it was a little bit more front and center. Doing the wild card in 2022 than what it is certainly when you're racing full time. You've got things are a lot more subliminal when you're doing it all the time and thinking about it, and having to go back and do an event like Bathurst and drive at the mountain, regardless of how many times you've been around there previously. Dealing with the modernness of a supercar and the changes and everything, and trying to make it all work without making a mistake was incredibly challenging. But I can get in a lot of cars, and I love that. I love getting in different race cars and having the chance to experience them again. I drove an Atlantic car, I think late last year, first time in a very long time, a Swift DB4, which I raced and campaigned, won in 1993. And it was just epic to get back behind the wheel of such an awesome little racing car and spend some time, trying to hone some skills again, and racing against kids that were born in the 2000s. After 2010. Some of them with 50-year-old old me doing, running around in a car like that. So, and I love driving this historic touring car stuff. Getting amongst it in a Sierra Cosworth or a BMW or a Zaxpeed Escort like I got to drive earlier this year. All that kind of stuff is the things I look forward to these days and having some fun. And I don't aspire to be heading off and doing anything too much more serious than that.
Given the TV work that you do and so on, I'll assume that you're still fairly closely dialed into what's happening in supercars. There's always doom and gloom around things. Shane goes to NASCAR and this and that and everything's no good. But geez, there's some amazing young drivers in the sport at the moment. If you think about Will Brown and Brock Feeney and Ryan Wood and Matt Payne and even someone like Richie having that second crack at a supercars career, I mean, I kind of feel like the future is pretty bright in terms of driving talent at the moment. What's your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more. Watching SVG depart and go over into a new challenge is awesome. I mean, yeah, he's such a talent, and he's driven by continuously learning and challenging himself. I think that was fantastic, and I don't think it leaves a hole. I think it creates more opportunity and it gives us a focus onto new talent, as you say, and we've got a raft of exciting talent that are coming through, and they're lined up, aren't they? They really are lined up through Super 2 and all the way in Carrera Cup and Michelin Sprint Challenge, which is providing a really good new platform of affordability for some stars to find their feet and get recognised. So, that I love seeing all that stuff, and I think. The likes of what Groves have done with Matt and giving him the chance, and what WAU have done with Ryan proves that teams need to take some of these risks sometimes and not go with the status quo, right? And look to I mean, what WAU have done with Ryan bringing him sort of reminds me of when HRT took Craig Lowndes way back in the day,
Yeah.
And took the punt, which everyone was against at the time, and then I followed suit not long after. Everyone was against it. It was Jeff Grech that was the one that convinced everybody that this was the future and this is what they needed to do, and that reminds me now of that. And I know that WAU were a little bit sceptical and not overly certain about taking a rookie like that and throwing him in the deep end, but look at the excitement that it's creating. And Matt Payne with Groves is a very similar situation. These guys have got skills, incredible skills, and you've got to go through a little bit of pain sometimes to get the results that you're after, and that excites me. So I hope Supercars and some of the teams are taking a look at that and thinking about what the chances are and the prospects are, because there's a lot of young talent out there.
I mean, obviously, WAU is a very different team to HRT. Some key differences, such as the fact there's blue ovals on the front of the cars, but it is effectively in its lineage the same team. Yep. I was actually sort of thinking, was there kind of a bit of an emotional response to seeing, the two WAU cars on the front row, a young Kiwi, one of those cars? I mean, as you say, you came up through that team as well. Was that kind of a moment watching on what happened in Perth and seeing those guys coming back and a rookie driver doing such an amazing job in a Clayton car?
Yeah, absolutely. I got strong connections there and through the Walkinshaw family who gave me so much of my career. And then, the connection that I've got with Ryan, and seeing him do what he's doing, it was just an awesome moment. I get shivers down my spine with that kind of stuff going on, and I'm really proud of what he's achieving, and as I say, I've got those connections way back through that actually means something still. So I enjoy all that kind of stuff too. There's the history side of it is such an important part, and people love the history of supercars and all the way back down through it, and there's just some awesome, amazing stories, and seeing people and seeing teams reinvent and find that success again in such a competitive environment. We need that. We need change all the time, right? We don't like teams dominating. We like to see it mixed up, and I think that is testament to what WAU have done now. They're mixing it up. They're introducing new talent that is going to be their future and potentially be how they're going to win more championships, and that's what we want. We want to be able to see those changes and enjoy the progress and see the competition, and I think Supercars is in a really good space with that right now, with Gen 3 working now as it should, evening the playing field and seeing the mix, on any given day in a qualifying session. That gets me excited.
Something that does come up a bit is the personalities of the next wave of drivers coming through. I mean, you were a hero to so many, as we've covered off, but because of the Ford-Holden rivalry being sort of at its peak, you were a polarizing figure. Ford fans weren't necessarily Murph fans at the time. How did you sort of deal with balancing being a hero to some and a villain to others during your career?
It's sort of I loved it. It was it meant a lot. I mean, I thrived on that a lot of the time, right? It was, you weren't there to make friends, and you weren't there to appease everybody. And yeah, listen, I was a bit over the top at times. Obviously, I had a fair bit of emotion and wore my heart on my sleeve, but I look back on it now and I don't actually really have any regrets. I mean, I have regrets around probably some of my behaviour at certain times that wasn't so good in the team environment, but that was again just built by the desire and the want to win and be successful, and probably struggling with at times not having that, so. But I want to see controversy. You want to see rivalries, right? We haven't got enough of those things. Those are something that we've talked about, supercars, and people have talked about a lot over the years. And unfortunately, it comes with, hand in hand with the world we live in today, the digital world and the social media world and all this kind of stuff. I mean, back in 2005 when Marcus and I had that stoush at the mountain, people made threats to you by writing a letter and it arriving by post, in the super cheap auto race team's mailbox, not which was PWR at the time. It wasn't done through social media. It wasn't done through your phone or
you
or
weren't
email.
bombarded with it every day.
You weren't. And it wasn't instantaneous either, right? And that's created a different space. And I just wish that more people, more drivers, really didn't take any notice of comments in their social media side of things. I wish that they just just saw it for what it is a lot of the time, which is it's opinion and it's just not worthy. It doesn't change. The people that you don't know having opinions about you by posting it online, they don't contribute to your career outcomes, right? They don't influence, the people that are important that make decisions, which is your team owner, your sponsors, that kind of stuff. They don't have influence, so don't worry about it. Just people are entitled to their opinions. Some of them are just not worth, looking at or listening to or taking any notice of. So why take any notice of it? Don't let it be a part of your day or your month or the year or your career. Just do what you do and make sure that the people that are important to you, that make the decisions about your future, are the ones you're listening to.
You've had your own first-hand experience breaking into supercars as a young driver. Now you're kind of going through it again, this time as a father with Ronan and Cormac, both, involved in motorsport and looking to build their own careers. How has it kind of changed in that time? Has it got harder with the financial requirements of modern motor racing, do you think, or are there still parallels to when you were coming up through the ranks?
I think the difference is that there's just so many more people trying to do it, right? The sport is very popular. It's fashionable. The fame and fortune is I think too much of a driver sometimes for families and individuals. It's just the access to it is everywhere. When I first started, I didn't even know how to access car racing. We were karting, and I was 10 years into my karting and 18 years old and wouldn't have known what to do if my dad and I wanted to go and get involved in car racing, right? It just seemed such a difficult, far away possibility and something we weren't attached to. Whereas now, it's easy to get involved in motor racing, and there is just so many people wanting to be a part of it. So, the competition is much deeper. If you look at the '86 championship, if I look at one example here in New Zealand over the past season, the talent in there and the commitment to their racing is just phenomenal. I mean, to stand out amongst a crowd, you have to be special, and the amount of people that are having a crack at it and the investment that's going into it individually and with families and the likes is just huge. And that wasn't the case when I was coming through the ranks back in the day. And that's what my sons are having to deal with. Is the popularity, the amount of competition, the need for just such large sums of money to go racing. It's just the reality of it. It's just the reality. It's the way it is, and you've got to find a way through it if that's what you want to do. And some will, but they're a minority, as we know. The vast majority of those that want to reach out to or want to go and become professional race car drivers, there is a tiny percentage that make it through.
From the outside, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it feels like the approach with the boys has been that they need to work for the racing they want to do. They've got to go out and, help find the backing, put the programs together rather than just throwing the weight of the Murphy name around, throwing lots of money at it and just going, well, have whatever you want. Is that a fair statement as to how you guys have approached the boys going racing?
Yeah, I'm sort of a little bit different to some other names that have been through the racing side of it. It's not where I want to be, spending every weekend and every week focused on the next phase of the Murphy name going through the motorsport. So they know that if they want to have a crack or do some racing, the most of the heavy lifting has to be done by them going out there and connecting with support that wants to be a part of their journey. So the family, is willing to assist to a level, but there's not a set pathway. And the goal is professional racing car driver. You're going to have to, they have had to work very, very hard to try and get through the stepping stones. And and Ronan did that last year with Michelin Sprint Challenge. He learned a lot. He was over there living in Melbourne. Had amazing support from some incredible partners that gave him the chance to have a crack. And he came away from the end of the season with some success but also again a whole lot of learning. And it hasn't proven to be quite enough to be able to go to that next stage at this point. And he knows he's on a timeline himself around what's where reality sits on if it's going to actually lead to that space of being professional. I think he's got a lot of examples to gauge against, including his mates, Matt Payne and Ryan Wood, to go, well, look where they are in a short period of time. Am I going to be able to do what they've done? And he's having to work that out for himself and make some hard decisions around that.
The first Taupo, as the king of Pukekohe, how did you find that first Taupo weekend a couple of months ago? And do you think that Supercars has found a new happy home in New Zealand?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think it went off brilliantly. After a short gap after the announcement around Pukekohe not being available anymore, to have 1 year off and then come back with what we had at Taupo was awesome. And a new venue is always great, right? A new racetrack, a new event for supercars is always an exciting thing. And I think we got our money's worth. And I think Supercars, take my hat off to the team there that put the event together and made it look as good as what it did. And obviously with the support of Tony's group and Josie Spillane and the Taupo International Motorsport Park, they presented a wonderful venue to stage the event, and there was just a huge amount of effort put into it, but it was hugely successful. And the Taupo itself and New Zealand and the government who put the money in, everyone was incredibly proud and happy with the outcome. So it's going to be a great home for the next couple of years from here on, and I see a big bright future still with Supercars and the amount of people that showed up and voted with their feet. It just proves how popular the sport is, and they got some great results out of it. With Andre fairy tale win on Saturday, that was just incredible.
There's been renewed talk about a second round. There's lots of enthusiasm for another round in New Zealand. On paper, it seems so easy. You're already there. Just go race somewhere else. Obviously, it's never quite that straightforward. What's your sort of take on, whether Supercars should be pursuing a second round in New Zealand and a timeline on that and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it's a lot more challenging than what it sounds, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion, you've got a challenge straight away with Taupo already locked in. Then where do you go next? So straight away, if you're going to go only 2.5 hours north and go to Hampton Downs, it actually Hampton Downs fits within the same region, within the Waikato region, so as what Taupo does. So it's not in the Auckland region, which is creates some an issue around some funding and again, a circuit that's so close to the other one. You're going to rob Peter to pay Paul straight away, right? Because some people are going to go, well, we're not going to go to both, can't afford to go to both. You've got corporate and sponsors. They're going, well, we only want to sponsor one. We don't want to be at the other one. We can't afford to go to both. There's a whole lot of commercial things that need to be taken into account there and how that works. And then is it 1 week apart or is it 2 weeks apart? And if it's 2 weeks apart, well, the teams have then got, are they going to travel and fly back to Australia? Are they going to come back? How does that all work? Who pays for all the accommodation? All the stuff that someone has to cover as far as costs. So it's a real challenging thing to look at. It'd be great to have another event in New Zealand, but the viability of it, it has to be taken and looked at really, really seriously around if it's possible to have a country the size of ours have two events. And you've got to do them back to back. You've got to do them because the time frames and the shipping and or the air freight or whatever it is, it doesn't make sense to obviously, do 2 trips to New Zealand. That's just not something I think is viable at all. So there's a lot to look at. South Island obviously would be great to take everyone down the South Island and go racing down there. I reckon, TQ's really excited. He would love to be able to have supercars go to Highlands, and it'd be just such an incredible thing to see. It would be phenomenal. But anything's possible, I suppose. But it comes down to the commercial side of things and making it work. And we know supercars is a big hungry beast, and it needs to be fed. So they don't do anything to lose money or for free, and that's fair enough. So. And the teams need to look at it in the same way. So it'd be great to have another round over there, but, we'll see what happens.
All right, let's finish with the Authentic Collectables Top 10 Shootout. So this, Murph, is 10 rapid-fire questions, and unsurprisingly, some are related to collectibles. I'm looking forward to this question. Who was your sporting idol growing up? Because finally we've got someone who might not answer with Greg Murphy. That's all we've had so far.
Well, it's probably almost predictable again. Then, although it's not, I'm not going to say me, but it was Peter Brock.
Yeah. That's that one we're going to get across the journey a few times as well, I reckon. Did you ever collect any motor racing memorabilia or posters, trading cards, or anything like that when you were younger?
I did. We remember. Over here in New Zealand, things were pretty hard to come by.
Yeah.
The Wellington Street Race sort of changed things a little bit, and so there was paraphernalia around that. I didn't get to go for the first couple of years, but my dad, I remember, he went and would bring back posters and bits and pieces that and the likes. But I became a Brock fan. In 1984, when he rolled out the Dayglow Marlboro VK Group C Commodore, right? That was just like, oh my God, hallelujah moment. That thing's the coolest thing I've ever seen, and Peter Brock's the coolest bloke I've ever seen drive a car. So I became pretty much fascinated and by Brocky, and then when he went to in 1985, turned up in New Zealand in the new Group A VK Commodore, and then he was mobile, had the mobile VK Commodore 05. So my cart number was 05, and we mail ordered through an ad in Motor Magazine a whole lot of Peter Brock merchandise, like in 1985, 86. And so it was all mobile merchandise, and that was when that arrived in New Zealand in a parcel, which probably, I don't know, took 6 weeks or something. That was the most incredible, coolest thing that in my life at that time. So I'd walk around in, mobile, HDT, Peter Brock, sweatshirt, T-shirt with 05 and all that stuff on it. I thought I was king shit at the time, and I vividly remember that was pretty cool. So. Anything to do with Pete back then was good with me.
Do you or did you collect things from your own career?
Probably I've been a bit useless with that actually. I've got model cars, so basically I've pretty much got every car collectible covered.
Yep,
I think, and it's all in a cabinet at home. So I do like that stuff. I gave away too many helmets, to be fair. We were pretty fortunate back in the day to get, quite a few helmets. And I used to give a few to sponsors and also auction a few off for charities and that kind of thing. So I don't have as many. I look back on that now and regret probably giving as many of those away as what I did. And suits and all that kind of stuff as well. I'm not someone to hang all that stuff on a wall and bits and pieces. I've still got some stuff, but not as much as what other guys might have. So, and I'll probably have a little bit of regret around some of that. I've got a few trophies, specific trophies, Bathurst ones, which are mostly copies because the teams get to keep the originals.
Yeah.
So the significant stuff, from there I've got, and that means something. But I'm not the big avid. I mean, I know Rick Kelly is just. He's got every single thing that he ever had all put into boxes, and it's quite phenomenal what he's got and how he's gone about it. I'm sure these other guys as well, but it probably doesn't mean as much to me to have all that as what it does to others.
What's your favorite out of all those model cars? Then, which one's your favorite when you sort of stand there at the cabinet and take a look at them?
There's a couple, but I suppose it's the one that's worth the most, which is the 03.
Yeah.
03 Bathurst car. I wish I'd probably hoarded another dozen of them. Probably, make a bit of dough out of those these days, apparently. So I'm told. So Ronan tells me, because he's a model car aficionado. But also the Bathurst 24-hour Monaro is one that I've got a special place in my heart for. And Peter Lucas, who owns that car now, has been very kind enough to allow me to drive it a few times. And I don't know that's not that those races have been remembered in history as probably the greatest races, but it means a lot to me because I got to drive with Brock that year in 03 in that car. And after 24 hours, GT and I were battling out a win there, absolutely going nuts with yellow flags, cars crashing, all sorts of stuff. The last few minutes of that race, it's quite memorable. It actually means something. So that model car and that trophy, the 24-hour trophy, is very special.
Do you collect anything or have anything interesting from outside of motorsport?
No,
just all racing all the time. That's the Murph way.
I'm not I like other sport, but I'm not fanatical about anything else.
Yeah. What's the ultimate race car you'd like to own or drive?
That's a good one. That's really hard to answer. I for some reason not some reason, it would be like a lot of other people. I love a McLaren F1 GTR race car. So, I actually was at Le Mans in 1996 at Le Mans driving the only time I've been there, which was pretty awesome, in a Porsche GT2, 911 GT2, down the Mulsanne Straight. And I have vivid memories of doing 300 kilometres an hour and McLaren GTRs going past about 30 kilometres an hour faster and braking 200 metres later and disappearing into the distance in the middle of the night. And they're just spectacular. So I would give a lot to have a chance to have a drive one of them.
Is there a team or driver or motorsport personality, past or present, that you'd love to work with?
Oh my goodness gracious! I would have appreciated some time to think about this.
Sorry, mate.
That is a very good question. I'm sure there is. Although saying that, I've got an admiration for a lot of race car drivers, but I sort of probably don't think about it in that respect. I mean, I feel very fortunate to have raced with and had teammates in the enduros and stuff that I have had. And be present with the likes of Peter Brock and stuff. True idols of the sport, and really special memories of those kinds of things. So, these days you look around and you see all these race car drivers and bits and pieces doing what they do, and I've got admiration for them, but it's not like I've got any kind of man crush or anything on any of them these days. It's the same things, the Sennas of the world and the likes that are people that you definitely have a huge admiration and for and see as real special drivers that have contributed so significantly to the sport in more ways than one. But race teams and the likes, again, driven some great race teams. Of course, I would have loved to have done some more racing at levels in sports car racing and the likes and things, but nothing overly specific.
Did you ever try a Mighty Murph pie?
Oh man, yeah. I had weekly deliveries coming home, and I had freezers full of them, And no, so you got that. It was the Big Ben pie, Mighty Murph pie. That's right. You forget the Burger King. Hold on a second, we got that wrong. The Mighty Murph burger. No, what was the burger? The Burger King? Oh, Murph's Meat Lovers. Yeah,
oh wow,
that's what that was.
Oh, that's amazing. So, I did actually see there are people that sell signed Mighty Murph pie wrappers on the internet. When I typed in Mighty Murph pie before, they are genuinely all over the internet for sale, those things. That's got to be up there with the more unique sort of memorabilia that's on the market, I reckon, is a pie wrapper.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to bloody set themselves up for life selling those on the internet.
Perfect. All right. Well, look, thanks for joining us, Murph. We really appreciate your time. I know you're very busy. It's great to chat to a proper legend of the sport, so it's really appreciated.
Oh, listen, I don't know. I'm not a fan of that word.
I know you don't like it. I know you don't like it. That's sort of half why I keep saying it, but it is actually true.
Right.
It is actually true. Trust me. Honestly, I'm not joking. If you went back and watched the other episodes of this, every Kiwi driver, Murph's my hero. So that's why we're like, we better get this bloke on the show. Have a chat to him.
All right. Thanks, ABL. Appreciate it, mate.
We'll be back in the next couple of weeks with a new episode of the Hard Card Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the Authentic Collectables YouTube channel and hit the little bell to make sure you never miss an episode.